South Africa celebrates Women's Day tomorrow, and joining me at the who joined me at the desk this morning to talk about women and leadership was Kunyalala Maphisa, president at Businesswomen's Association of South Africa. I chatted to her a little earlier about women assuming the ranks.
The census basically looks at all the companies that are listed on the JSE, including their subsidiaries, and we look at the number of women who are in executive management, who are directors, CEOs and chairpersons. We also look at state-owned enterprises and do exactly the same analysis. And we compare this against the private sector. This is information that we get from the Department of Labor. And so we look at all the departments, rather, in the government sector to see what the numbers look like in senior management and then do that comparison.
So in essence, what has this year's survey said about women in leadership in South Africa?
Unfortunately, the numbers are not too different from the previous year or the previous years for that matter. Then it's a very, very small increase. So in fact, if you look at some instances, for example, directorships have decreased by about 0.5% or so. So the numbers still look as dismal as they were the year before.
Why? What are some of the impediments that that women who want to enter the workforce face at this stage?
I think the general feedback that we get lately is that there are not a lot of women that are available for directorship positions. There are not a lot of women who are available in senior management positions. But I think that it's more than just that. It's also a fact that companies are not deliberately making a point that they advance women within the corporate environment. So it's both the fact that they may not be available, but also that no efforts have been made in terms of...
When you say available, you mean in terms of having the necessary skills to actually take on those appointments?
It's a combination of that, and also the fact that the general trend has also been that women, once they get to very senior management positions, they actually step out and go and do their own thing because they find it a lot more flexible to run their own businesses as opposed to trying to compete, because the game at the top is obviously very different. I mean, it's long hours, it's travel, it's whatever. So a lot of women have to balance that with the family environment, and most of them, when they get to senior management, and that's a trend that we've also seen in the recent past, that they actually do step down. So it's a combination of both availability, but also because companies are not making a concerted effort in widening that pool to ensure that women can be advanced.
What can companies be doing? Because as women have to balance, their family lives with their business lives and their careers, we've got businesses needing to balance equity in the workplace on a gender basis with simple bottom line and profits, and who's going to be bringing more to the table in terms of fulfilling positions.
A lot of companies have found very creative ways of making it work. I mean, you've got flexi hours, and some have got, in the workplace they create an environment that is conducive for women to bring their kids if it's a case of children. So it's really an issue of how committed the business is in ensuring that that balance is achieved.
Let's hone in on a few committed businesses, just so that we have some concrete examples on the table of companies that are that are getting it more right than others.
Well, I know that a company, for example, like Ernst & Young, they do have that flexi hours where one can work either half the day at home and half the day in the office, or they've got facilities within the office that can make it easier for them to be able to do that. A company like Deloitte, I know that they've got something similar. There are quite a number of companies, particularly the bigger ones, that have gone out of their way to ensure that some environment is created to enable women to be able to juggle their home life and their office life.
So that a few companies that are making some headway, but still we've got women clearly, the minority amongst their male counterparts. So while we've got stats like these being released, I mean, what do we actually do with them? Because that's the question, aside from raising awareness, surely targeted interventions need to follow suit. Are they following suit?
Certainly from our side as the Businesswomen's Association, we have decided that we are going to have a very targeted approach in terms of dealing with the issue. And one of the issues that we decided to tackle was that obviously the companies that we are looking at are companies that are listed on the stock exchange. And so naturally you will go to the stock exchange and say, in terms of their listing requirements and their listing rules, we have to explore the possibility that gender diversity must be a listing requirement in terms of the JSE rule, because that way it's a targeted intervention. That
have those discussions begun already?
Those discussions are underway. I mean, it's you can imagine it's not going to be something that's easy. They're not going to say, oh yes.
That's exactly it, because I wanted to get a sense of the kind of response you've actually gotten.
It's a conversation that's still on the table. As you know, there's a leadership change at the JSE, so we also have to wait for that environment to kind of settle down before we go. But in terms of the kind of support, I mean, the Ministry for Women, for example, the Gender Commission, all those stakeholders are on board in terms of supporting that call, because I think people have gotten to a point where it's not an issue for debate. It's just a question of how do we actually do it and how do we actually effect it. It's not something that we feel that is going to be necessarily contentious. It's just a question of actually getting to sit down and say, this is what we would like to do, and getting on with it.